In 1998, 3 years after Alan Wilder left Depeche Mode, he finally spoke openly about the reasons behind his decision. The interview appeared on his own website, recoil.co.uk, in the Q&A Vault section, a place where he shared thoughts with fans in his own words, without media distortion. By then, rumours had already started to spread about why he'd walked away. Some said he and Dave Gahan had fallen out, or that personal problems had torn them apart. Alan found those stories ridiculous. He laughed at one claim that Dave had said Alan wasn't the kid of his dreams, calling it the most bizarre thing he'd ever heard. Whatever happened, it was nothing like that. Some people even wondered why, after leaving Depeche Mode, Alan didn't team up with Erasure to make something similar to Unsound Methods, but with Andy Bell's voice. Alan laughed at the thought. He said it would be like leaving the cast of The Fast Show just to go and appear on Cannon and Ball, a joke comparing a sharp modern comedy to one that was much more old-fashioned, meaning it wouldn't really be a step forward. When he looked back on his 14 years in Depeche Mode, Alan said the good times still outweighed the bad. His decision to leave wasn't purely about tension in the group, though that played a part. It was deeper than that. He said he felt privileged to have seen the world, met extraordinary people, and lived a life that only a few ever experience. He stayed in touch with some of the people closest to the band: Daniel Miller, Johnny Kessler, JD, Flood, Daryl Bermonti and Andy Franks. He hadn't seen Anton Corbijn in ages, but he'd recently received a kind message from him. When Alan finally told the others he was leaving, Martin Gore shook his hand but looked embarrassed, while Andy Fletcher became defensive and seemed to take it personally. Alan didn't understand why. He wasn't blaming anyone. Dave Gahan was in Los Angeles, so Alan sent him a fax after several failed attempts to reach him by phone. Dave didn't reply directly, but later sent a huge bouquet of flowers when Alan's daughter, Paris, was born. Alan said Dave was a perfect gentleman, and that he understood exactly why he'd left. Alan had no desire to dramatize the situation. He'd already made a public statement explaining his reasons, and he stood by it. He believed in keeping his dignity and avoiding public squabbles. The truth, he said, was simple. He just wasn't enjoying life in the band anymore. The spark had gone. He felt there was nothing more he could achieve within Depeche Mode's boundaries, and it didn't make sense to stay when the joy had faded. Many assumed his departure was linked to Dave's well-known personal struggles, but Alan made it clear that wasn't the case. Though he admitted that at the time, things looked bleak, his decision had nothing to do with that. He knew it was the right move, and he never looked back. He said he had absolutely no regrets about his decision. Alan said he wasn't angry with anyone in the band and had always tried to keep things friendly. He still had some business involvement with Depeche Mode and said it was important for them to remain on good terms. He laughed about how often the media confused him with Andy Fletcher. Some articles even claimed that a drummer named Alan Fletcher had left after a breakdown, while Fletch was called Ian Wilder. He saw it as lazy journalism and a sign that some reporters barely researched their stories. He understood, though, how interviews could twist the truth, how people sometimes said things they didn't mean or had their words taken out of context. Because of that, he didn't take too seriously everything that was said by others about the split. Some fans told him they missed his touch in later Depeche Mode albums, saying Ultra would have sounded better if he'd produced it. Alan disagreed. He'd left precisely because he wanted to work with other people and explore freely. Producing Depeche Mode again would have defeated that purpose. He remembered his years in the band fondly, though he admitted there were plenty of dull moments waiting around in airports and hotels. He quoted Charlie Watts from the Rolling Stones, who once said he'd spent 5 years playing music and 20 years just hanging about. Alan said that summed it up perfectly. He hadn't planned to leave years in advance, but he'd never seen himself staying in a band forever. He said it would feel a bit sad to be in a band in middle age. Even if things had been different, he doubted he'd have stayed much longer. He wanted freedom, variety, and a life not tied to one group. When it came to the practical side of leaving, Alan explained that he still received his fair share of royalties, a 25% cut of everything he'd worked on, from construction time again, to songs of faith and devotion, and even later releases. He smiled and said, "Do you think of me as a fired executive?" Mute Records and Daniel Miller, the label's founder, were supportive and understanding. Daniel had seen it coming and fully backed Alan's Recoil project. As for Depeche Mode's fan magazine Bong, some fans felt it was unfair that they didn't mention Recoil. Alan didn't mind. He said that since he still mentioned Depeche Mode on his own site, it was natural. He'd been part of that history. But the others had nothing to do with Recoil, so there was no reason they'd cover it. In the end, Alan Wilder looked back on his time in Depeche Mode as a remarkable chapter, one filled with creativity, tension, success, and growth. He left on his own terms, without bitterness or regret, grateful for everything it brought him. And from then on, he focused on what he always wanted, making music without compromise and living a life that truly made him happy.